obviously talk a little bit about October 3rd. Before I do that, I think there's a now a very large sort of, again, kind of pop culture tie-in through the book and then the movie that followed the book. And thanks to the movie, there is one particular incident between you and then Captain Steele that has kind of been immortalized in the canon. And I gotta ask, what is the actual story between you and Captain Steele in the Chow Hall?
Yeah, it made a good scene in the movie, but it was really wasn't that big a deal at the time. Um, we had been had developed relationships with some of the non-coms in the Ranger Battalion, and we were doing some cross training with them. So we were going out with them on their blocking position rehearsals. We were helping them work through some of their CQB training. You know, if you think back in the time in the early '90s, close quarters battle or CQB wasn't something that was common knowledge in the big army. Those tactics, techniques, and procedures were primarily developed by special mission units, for special mission units. So big army was doing stuff like patrolling, either vehicle or foot patrolling, working on this what I would call the basic infantry component of training for the military. So we were doing our workups for close quarter battle, and we brought the Rangers in to participate in it. And Rangers, you got some young soldiers that are starting out their career there, so you're emphasizing things like safety and stuff like that. So in the training, we were talking to them about making sure their weapons on safe at all times, unless you're going to engage something, and then finger on the trigger only when you're going to pull the trigger, and then the rest of the time it's off the trigger. And one of the things that we used to say to each other was, this is our primary safety, right? So you got a safety on the weapon, and you have muzzle awareness, which is a facet of safety, but really this is the one, because this is the one that's connected to your brain. So whether you're going to pull the trigger or not, that's the final one. That's the final safety and the most important one. So we would repeat that in training to them, and then it stuck. And then later on, either that day or the next day, I'm going through the chow hall, and felt somebody tap me on the back, and it was Captain Steele. He wasn't a bad guy. I mean,
Right.
it makes it look like he's a bad guy, but he wasn't. He said, "Hey, Sergeant, your weapon's off safe." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's safe. Don't worry about it," because we had a different clearing process. Right. So when you cock an M4 or an M16 family of weapons, and then it'll go on safe, right? But once you drop the hammer, it will no longer go on safe because the weapon is no longer cocked.
Right.
Right. So we store our own weapons like an armorer. So we had our own arms room. So when we would safe our weapon, we would drop the mag, clear the chamber, make sure that you eject that round, inspect the chamber, and then drop the hammer.
At which point you couldn't put it back on safe.
Which you won't go back on safe, but that's what armorers do, right? They drop a hammer. So when a young soldier hands his weapon to an armorer, it's on safe. First thing he does is he inspects it, makes sure it's clear. He drops the hammer, puts it in the rack. So that was our process for doing it, and he didn't really understand that at the time. And he said, it's off safe, and I said, well, here, put it on safe. Really, as a teaching point. And he said, it won't go on safe. What's wrong with it? I said, it's not cocked. Weapon is safe. So when I can walk up to a weapon of that particular family in the middle of the night, I can pick it up and I can try to put it on safe. If it doesn't go on safe, I know the weapon is not cocked. And unless somebody did something like open that weapon up, drop one in the tube, if it's not cocked, there's a good chance there's nothing in that tube, because in order to put one in the tube, you have to cock a weapon. Right? And so I don't know that it's safe when I pick it up and I can't put it on safe, but I know it's not been cocked. Right, so it's a good indication of the status of the weapon for me. But that's just kind of the way we did things. He didn't do things that way. He did things the way they did it, and so I just said, "Hey, that's it. I got it. Don't worry about it." It was a minor thing, but there happened to be a couple of young soldiers standing around when that happened, and later on that night they did a skit, and they combined the the training that they received that day were, hey, this is my safety with that event, and they made this skit up to kind of roast their commander,
Yeah.
and it was all in good fun. But ended up in the movie
Yeah.
a little bit different, but went down in history as the fact of the matter, right? But no, he wasn't a bad guy. He just didn't know what we did.
You guys just had different procedures.
Yeah.
Well, and the telephone effect kicks in, and every time the story gets
Oh yeah.
told, it's a little
Yeah.
different. And
Yeah.
then,
It's a great story.
yeah, yeah, no, like you said, it made for great movie making.